All right, so we're back here on another special Couch Coach Live. We are actually concluding our Power Five recap. We saved the best for last, most definitely with the Southeastern Conference. And I got my guy Zach from the Blue Bloods podcast here with me. What's going on, Zach?
Man, not much. This is the conference I've been waiting on. I even had to rock a little bit of Auburn gear, kept it white so we could be somewhat neutral, but it had to put a little bit of Auburn in here.
Yeah, I had to right, and that's what we do here. You gotta rep your squad. I did it the other day with the ACC preview, not preview, but the recap. Definitely bringing your Auburn. The Auburn gear is definitely celebrated here. So definitely bring that on along. So yeah, so we're gonna talk about the SEC tonight. So much further ado, let's get it going. Who is the MVP of the conference this year?
Man, I don't even know how many people are watching this, but if I gave them a guess, I got a feeling 100% of them know exactly who the MVP of the conference was because he was the MVP of college football, and that is absolutely Devontae Smith, man. I mean, when you're the best player in college football, you got to be the best player in your conference. I mean, just look at the list of awards he won, man. Heisman Trophy winner, Consensus All-American, Bolitnikoff Award, Maxwell Award, SEC Offensive Player of the Year, Walter Camp Player of the Year. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And I know this is going to sound steep because Randy Moss had an amazing, year down there in Marshall, and there's a lot of other receivers that had big years, but I think it's a consensus. This was the best ever college football year for a wide receiver has ever had. And I know that sounds crazy, but you look, he had 117 catches this year in a COVID-shortened season with an all SEC schedule, with a first-year starting quarterback, without his sidekick Jalen Waddle taking coverages away from him, and no preseason workouts. He goes 117 catches, over 1,800 yards, 23 receiving touchdowns, and he had a punt return just to add on because he had to. The kid led the country in receptions, receiving yards, and receiving touchdowns. That's all that matters. If I have a receiver that leads in those three categories, I don't care what else he does. That's all I'm asking from a wide receiver. And like I said, he faced all those problems, man. And last year as a junior, he's kind of like the second man in rotation right there behind Jerry Jeudy. And then you also had Jalen Waddle on that team, John Mechie. And he increased his catches this year, man, in a shortened season by 49 catches. He caught 49 more passes this year from Mac Jones than he did from Tua last year. He had 9 more touchdowns, over 600 more yards. And this is what blows my mind. So as the season went on, we were talking on our podcast, all you have to do to beat Bama is stop Devontae Smith. That's your one strategy. Stop Devontae Smith. And as the season went on, he seemed like he become harder to stop. His biggest performances came late in the season. His last 3 games, man, again in the SEC championship game against Florida, 15 catches, 185 yards, and two touchdowns. In the SEC championship, when all they had to do was game plan against him, then he go into the playoffs. Both playoff games, he had 3 receiving touchdowns with extended time to prepare for him. And I know you had the preview with multiple guests for the national championship. I mean, the one key was just double him, stop him, let someone else beat you. Jalen Waddle's banged up, let Mechie, Najee, someone else beat you. And they're putting linebackers in press man coverage against the best wide receiver in college football in Ohio State. They put a kid that's like 6'3", 250 and can't run a lick against arguably one of the best receivers in the country. And it just, nobody in the country, man, had any coverages. They didn't have a player. They didn't have a scheme, nothing that could limit or stop Devontae Smith. And I think that speaks volumes at how great he was. And in terms of defensive MVP, there was only one player that could stop him. But the problem is he was on the same team. He played for the Crimson Tide too, and that's Patrick Surtain. I know the name sounds familiar. His dad was an elite NFL player for a while. He has that NFL bloodline. This kid is a baller too on the other side of the ball. SEC Defensive Player of the Year. He was also a consensus All-American. and you look at his stats, man. 1 interception is everyone's like, how did he win Defensive Player of the Year? It's because no one targeted him. They knew not to throw his way, and he only allowed a 43% completion percentage against him in coverage all season. That's elite to shut down the SEC like that. 43% stout. He only allowed 200 receiving yards all year, and he only allowed 2 touchdowns. And this was the stat that blows my mind: no penalties for the last 2 seasons. Not a single pass interference, not a single holding, not a single offsides, not a single face mask. This kid plays flawless football. And against the most stout competition he faced, which was LSU, in my opinion, that wide receiving core, say what you want about their season, they have some ballers out there at LSU at the wide receiver spot. Targeted multiple times, no catches allowed in Death Valley against LSU. Shut them down. Targeted over 5 times in that game. Shut everyone down. And he never had a game where he allowed more than 4 catches this year. That's balling as a DB, man. That you can't ask for anything more than that. He has that NFL father that, really, it took his game to the next level. He was the most dominating DB in the entire country. And I think, with the drafts coming up, there is no question outside of maybe Caleb Farley, who didn't even play this year, or Javon Holland, who didn't play this year. This kid's got to go number 1 in terms of DBs off the board. And if you're picking inside that top 5-10 and you need a DB, Patrick Surtain is your guy.
Yeah, like you said, and they shut down that receiving core, and then you got a guy who's probably going to be a top 5 pick in Jamar Chase. But Alabama is something else. They're just.
Well, we should just had a recap for Alabama. We'll do the SEC and then Alabama recap.
right. Unfortunately, right. It just embarrassment of riches. Yeah, absolutely. So, who was the biggest surprise in this in SEC this year?
Man, I don't like admitting where I'm wrong, but I missed the boat completely on this team. The Texas A&M Aggies, man, that team. Out of nowhere, I had them finishing 4th in the West, behind Auburn, behind LSU, behind Bama, which they ended up doing. But there's no way I would have bet my entire paycheck, my tax return, whatever you wanted to bet, that this team was not going to be a top 5 team this year. And they were 9-1, second in the SEC West, and they easily could be one of the surprises of the entire country in terms of how Jimbo Fisher and this coaching staff just turned it around in just a season out of nowhere. And I think, the Senior Bowl was this weekend, and we saw what Kellen Mond did at the Senior Bowl, winning the MVP. And I think his development under Jimbo Fisher is the biggest reason why we saw A&M take this step. He had a lot of turnover problems. He was inconsistent. And this year, he completed over 63% of his passes, had 19 passing touchdowns, only 3 turnovers all year. That is elite in terms of what you're looking for at a QB position in a conference like the SEC, where he's throwing against Patrick Surtain, Malachi Moore, all these guys in the SEC, Derek Stingley, and he's only turned it over 3 times. That was the big difference. He ended up becoming the unquestioned leader of that offense, which is the main reason this team took off. The Aggies had 6 first or second team all SEC players. It included Isaiah Spiller, who had a breakout season at running back, over 1,000 yards rushing there, almost 10 touchdowns. And the one game he didn't perform well was the Bama game where they lost. They needed Isaiah Spiller to take that load off of Kellen Mond for that offense to flow exactly how Fisher wants. And they had breakout stars on defense, which really contributed to this season. Jalen Jones, true freshman safety. He was a 5-star. He played like a 5-star all year. Played elite at that safety position. Buddy Johnson at linebacker had over 86 tackles this year. And then Leon O'Neal Jr., unquestioned leader on the back end at the other safety spot. All 3 of these guys contributed to that defense that took that SEC step. So we had Cole Kublik on the podcast. And we asked him why is A&M always stuck in the middle? And he said they don't recruit SEC players. They don't recruit players that are going to take that next step and bring that program into prominence in the SEC. Jimbo Fisher is changing that. Jalen Johnson, SEC player. Buddy Johnson, SEC player. These guys are balling now. And listen, Jimbo Fisher finally proved that all that work, all that recruiting, all the coaching staff, it finally is paying off in College Station. And there were people getting impatient. Don't get me wrong. There are people saying, Did we pay this guy too much? Did we do this? Did we do that? He is proving it now. And guys, I hate to tell you this, he's got a 5-star true freshman quarterback coming in that is a baller, and A&M isn't going anywhere. And in my preseason top 10, A&M is right there in the top 5 because they are going to be a really good team next year.
Yeah, and that's another one too, because I remember before they played Florida, we were all like ragging on them, like, oh man, like Texas A&M, it's gonna be a slaughter. And we all looked like, oh, we gave Florida like the kiss of death that week.
Yeah, well, listen, that Florida defense gave itself the kiss of death. That Florida defense, I don't think could have been any worse. And, I feel like it's where you put so much deodorant on a problem that, like, you forget it's there. And week after week, like on our podcast, it was like, man, for that Florida defense. But look, man, the Kyle Pitts, Kyle Trask, the running game. Look at Dan Mullen, man. They scored 50. And it's like we always got distracted by everything else. But then once they got in a real game, that defense everyone was like, whoa, that defense is really bad. It's like, and then I thought back, I was like, we knew this defense was absolutely terrible. And we just kept pushing it back and pushing it back until it was a problem and we just ignored it. And so I think that A&M game, I think the Florida A&M game, at first I was like, okay, they won because Florida was so bad on defense. But then looking back at it, I rewatched the game after the season. I was like, A&M played a really good game. I think it was more A&M made the plays to win than Florida gave it away. And I don't think they got enough credit for that win. And I don't think they got enough credit for sticking with Alabama early in the season because I think it was 41-23 was the final score or something like that. It was a lot closer than that. A&M was winning in the second quarter before Kellen Mond threw a horrible pick six to Malachi Moore, and it kind of shifted all that momentum. So I don't think A&M got enough credit for the season they had.
Yeah, absolutely. So, who was the breakout player in this conference?
Man, I had to slide it in here, and I got some stats to back up my bias a little bit, but the offensive one's got to be Tank Bigsby, freshman running back, Auburn. I got 2 true freshmen here for I think the first time in any of these previews. Bigsby was the co-SEC freshman of the year, which is spectacular, man. He only started like 3 or 4 games. He didn't get utilized early, and then late in the season in the Tennessee game, he fractured his hip and was pretty much out for the rest of the season. They tried to play him in the Bama game. He got like 2 carries. He didn't really play a lot down the stretch, but in limited action, he rushed for over 800 yards, was averaging over 6 yards per carry, had 5 rushing touchdowns, over 300 kick return yards. Would have had a return, got a horrible call at Ole Miss that took away his 102-yard kickoff return, which would have put him the leader in that statistical category. But in limited action as a true freshman, 5th in the SEC in rushing yards, 4th in yards per attempt, 2nd in kickoff return yards, 3rd in yards per return. This kid's top 5 in everything and didn't even play. He wasn't even in the top 8 in terms of total carries for the year. So he's turning that limited production into serious production. And he was the heart and soul of this Auburn team, man. As an Auburn fan, it killed me to watch this season because when Bigsby wasn't on the field or wasn't getting touches, this offense was anemic, man. It was disgusting to watch. It was really, really hard to watch. 3-0, man. This is going to hurt me to even talk about. 3-0 in games where Bigsby received 20 plus carries. And he rushed for over 130 yards in all 3 of them. They were 2-3 when he received less than 15 carries per game and did not hit the 100+ yard mark in any of these. War Eagle, man. I agree here. This is hard to listen to. This is hard to listen to as an Auburn fan. But, I just don't get why you're winning games if you're giving this kid the ball. You're putting the ball in the hands of Bo Nix, who's been inconsistent. And, I think Malzahn completely underutilized Bigsby throughout the season. He relied way too much on the passing game. He had the best freshman in the SEC, man. This would be like if Mac Brown said, Javonte Williams, we know you're good. We're going to let Sam Howell throw it 60 times in the game. You would have been furious.
Yeah.
And this is where it gets interesting, man. Auburn hired a new coach in Brian Harsin. Every season he's coached, he's had a running back top 250 carries. So I think Bigsby's prime for another breakout next year in terms of, how is he going to be utilized in this new system? And this is going to blow your mind. The offensive line was so bad this year for Auburn, man. We got an offensive tackle commit yesterday. It was our first offensive tackle commit out of high school since the 2017 recruiting class. So Bixby's doing this without offensive linemen coming to Auburn. They just got a bunch of old dudes that can't play, and it's really, really bad. And that's why you saw the Auburn struggle this year. I think Bixby's going to be a potential SEC player of the year next year. He's going to ball out. And I put this in here. Yeah, as an Auburn student, we all know, man, it was hard. But this is going to even be harder for me to talk about is that the surprise of the year, man, or the breakout, Malachi Moore, Alabama. We're back to Alabama. I feel like every segment we got to go back to Tuscaloosa as bad as I don't want to. Malachi Moore, man, this kid is a baller. He's also a true freshman. Bama got him. He was kind of one of the more underrated. You know how Bama recruiting class is. It's 5-star, 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 5-star. This kid was not a 5-star. He was a 4-star. Still a top 100 player, but no one talked about him because he's not a 5-star. He led the team in turnovers produced on defense as a true freshman. Only started 11 games, and he was all SEC freshman, second team all SEC, had 3 interceptions, 6 pass breakups, a touchdown. He was the most dominant true freshman DB in the country, and this is why Saban's a DB developer. You see that. He was targeted 67 times, man. Couch goes 67. That's a lot of targets for a true freshman. You know how it is. You're a true freshman, you're going to go after them. Only allowed 1 touchdown all year. Under 500 yards allowed, man. So he allowed 400 yards and 1 touchdown, but made 11 plays on the ball in terms of pass breakups and INTs and all that. Only 2 penalties all year as a true freshman too. That's elite production, man. Saban's got them boys trained out there, man. They do not make mistakes, and that's why you see them win the Natty. This kid, this is going to blow your mind. His pro comparison as a true freshman, he reminds me so much of Minka Fitzpatrick when he started as a true freshman at Alabama. He's got the same instincts. He's got the same, once he intercepts the ball, that thing's going to the house, or at least close to it. This kid is a playmaker, and I think he'll be a top 15 pick when he comes out in like 3 years.
Nice. Before we move on, I was like, got Kurt charges.
That's a fact. He's not lying, man. He's not lying.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. I mean, essentially,
how many stars?
Yeah, a whole lot. Unfortunately, yes, indeed.
That's a fact.
Facts. So, the biggest disappointment in this conference.
Man, I put a lot of thought into this one. We take a break. We take an off day in between these, and man, I took so many notes on this and discussion, and I wanted to go Auburn, but it's like, who really expected a lot from Auburn? I wanted to go LSU, but when you lose 21 of like 22 starters, what did you expect? I mean, we went from Joe Burrow to Miles Brennan, who ended up getting hurt, to 2 true freshmen who they couldn't decide on. And, I'm going with Georgia. I know that sounds crazy. Georgia and Kirby Smart. And I know this is crazy, but let me break it down. I mean, Georgia almost made the SEC championship, but I'm putting this season as a disappointment. I don't know if there's a worse quarterback developer or decision maker than Kirby Smart in the entire country. I really don't. And he waited until Mississippi State, which was like the 10th game of the season, to play JT Daniels, who's a transfer 5-star from USC, who was the on track to be the Pac-12 freshman of the year. And he decided to watch 2 quarterbacks struggle for 10 weeks of the season before making a move. These stats, I did not make these up. These are real. You can look them up. DeJuan Mathis, this is the person they went with first. He started the first game and got benched at halftime. For the season, completed only 40% of his passes for 89 yards, a touchdown, and 3 interceptions. That's who out of camp they thought was going to be the best option at quarterback. He graded out by Pro Football Focus at a 33. A 33. That is disgraceful as a college quarterback. Then you have Stetson Bennett. He's the kid that started the Auburn game, got a big win there, started at the Bama game, and really that's where we first saw them struggle start to come out. completed less than 55% of his passes, threw for 1,100 yards. That'll be important here in a second. He threw for 1,100 yards, 8 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions in 8 games. Then they finally, JT Daniels steps in, completes over 67% of his passes. That is 15 more percent than any of the other 2 guys. He throws for 1,200 yards in only 4 games. So this kid outperforms both starters combined in 4 less games than them. I don't know what else you needed to see, man. I don't know what was happening in practice. He throws for 10 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. JT Daniels balled out. He wins the Peach Bowl against Cincinnati, who was a very good team. Do not let anyone fool you with all those opt-outs from Georgia. And, you look at Kirby Smart's decision-making, in the history of being the Georgia head coach. I want you to tell me which one of these makes sense. He picked Fromm over Jacob Eason.
Yeah.
Bad decision. And then it gets worse. Fromm over Justin Fields.
Correct.
That's a fireable offense. That's a fireable offense. I don't care if you've been to the Natty. I don't care if you're out recruiting everyone. And then you start DeJuan Mathis and Stetson Bennett over a 5-star in JT Daniels. And listen, I'm not saying that if they start JT Daniels, they beat Alabama. Probably not happening. But can they beat Florida? I think maybe so. And he can recruit at the highest level. I'll give y'all that. I will surrender that point. But what has he really done with them? He's got 1 national championship appearance. That's great. I'll take that. And then he choked it away. 13-0 halftime lead, blown to a true freshman quarterback making his first ever start. And then he chokes away, 2 SEC championships? And then he chokes away this season by picking the incorrect quarterback and losing to Florida, which could have put him in the SEC championship. And who knows what happened? Who knows if Bama stays healthy the whole way? Who knows if Georgia, a lot could happen, but at least give yourself a chance. And I need to know. I need to know the offensive coordinator, the head coach. I mean, the offensive coordinator plays a big part, but it's ultimately the head coach's decision to go with it or not. I need to see the practice film that told Kirby Smart that DeJuan Mathis was going to be a better quarterback than JT Daniels. And I definitely need to see the film where Jake Fromm was going to be the better quarterback than Justin Fields. I absolutely need to find out where that's locked away in a safe somewhere, because I still cannot believe that we're having this conversation on February 1st, 2021, saying that Jake Fromm was thought to be the better quarterback than Justin Fields. I still can't believe it. And I think for Georgia to have the number 1 recruiting class or top 3 year after year, to not even be able to win your division is unacceptable. And I think Kirby Smart in Georgia, and for that reason, is the biggest disappointment in the SEC this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's see what we got here. So he said,
yeah. Man, say what you want. I know a lot of people, claim that Nick Saban is a cheater, all this kind of stuff. He recruits high, I guess, maturity kids, man. You don't get a lot of kids in there getting in trouble and, making bad decisions. You got to be mature and you got to show a level of professionalism if you're going to Alabama. So that does not surprise me at all.
Yeah. Kick Vandy out and went out of the conference and Clemson. Oh.
Listen, as much as awesome as that sounds, man, I think Couch Coach might be for that too. Instead of having to play Clemson, go ahead and get a Vandy game in there. Get Sam Howell ACC championship.
We can do a trade. We can do the fight Skip Bayless's, and you get to fight Deshaun Watson, Trevor Lawrence's. We'll take that trade in a heartbeat.
1,000%.
Yes, indeed. We definitely need, so definitely, most definitely.
Yeah, Gunnar Stockton, man, 5-star kid. He was originally committed to South Carolina. Mike Bobo left South Carolina to go to Auburn as the offensive coordinator. He was considering Auburn, but you still got Bo Nix there, who was a former 5-star. You have a kid. Listen, this is going to turn into me knowing way too much. Demetrius Davis, out of Texas, 4-star quarterback, just won the 6A state title down in Texas. This kid is the winningest high school quarterback in Texas high school football history coming in for Auburn. He passed Kyler Murray. He lost 3 games as a starter. And this kid, I'm telling Couch Coach, I'm going to fanboy here for a minute. I mean,
Hey.
this kid, listen, if there's ever someone that's going to bring Auburn to the promised land, it's this kid. I'm so impressed with him. He's on the smaller side, which is why he doesn't get a lot of talk. He's 5'10", 200 pounds from North Shore. As y'all remember, North Shore is where Zachary Evans was from last year. But up until this year, man, he had 73 touchdowns and 7 interceptions with over 5,000 yards passing and 27 rushing touchdowns as a sophomore and junior. And now after his senior year, he's up over 100 passing touchdowns. He only threw 2 interceptions this year. He had another, I think, 10 rushing touchdowns. So this kid holds all the state records as a Texas quarterback. And if you want to look, I'm just saying this, there's been a lot of good quarterbacks to come out of Texas. If you're the winningest and most successful Texas quarterback out of high school, you're doing something right. So I think this kid is going to be a baller, man. I'm so excited for him.
Yeah, he goes down a laundry list of successful quarterbacks from Texas.
Kyler Murray, man, that his high school film, I still think it's fabricated, man. It's almost like that can't be real, man. He was hurting kids' dreams down in Texas.
That's true. He is that's definitely going to be interesting. And you know what? That's a perfect segue. So hey, we couldn't make this up. So what to look for in 2021 in the SEC?
Man, listen, this is going to sound crazy. I think it's going to come down to 3 teams. I think it's going to come down to Bama. How can Bryce Young take that next step that we saw Mac Jones, Tua Tagovailoa, a bunch of these guys take? You're going to have talent everywhere else, man. Alabama's got talent on talent on talent. They got talent in the back that don't even have to go to practice. They're in the dorms as gray shirts that could start anywhere else. I think A&M is probably the second best team in the conference right now. They got a kid coming in as a 5-star quarterback that's going to be the best quarterback they might have ever had since Johnny Manziel. And he's a prototypical Jimbo Fisher quarterback. And if say what you want about Jimbo Fisher, the guy knows quarterbacks. And I think A&M is going to be on the upswing. They're very, very young on defense. They were very young on defense this year. And I think they're going to be primed for a big run. And in terms of Georgia, you always got to look at Georgia. If JT Daniels coming back, they're returning a lot of people. They got some pieces in that secondary they got to replace, which makes me hesitant. So I think Georgia, A&M, and Bama are going to be the top of the top. Florida, big drop off. I think Florida's going to fall off a cliff. You lose Trask, you lose that running back. You do get Eric Gilbert from LSU though, 5-star tight end. He transferred from LSU, so look for that. But I think Florida had lost too much talent. They're going to be on the downswing. In terms of sleepers, I do think, I mean, I saw the comment here, Arkansas is very improved. Yeah. Arkansas was shocking this year in terms of some of the teams they beat. Listen, Sam Pittman was the least talked about hire of the entire offseason last year, and it looks like it might be the best hire out of all the SEC hires last year. The guy can coach. He had that team playing hard. If they can find a quarterback to replace Felipe Franks, that's huge, absolutely huge, and they can make a big step. I think depending on who starts for Auburn, it could be a thing, but I think they're probably a year or two away, especially with a first-year head coach trying to get that system together. And I already told you some of the recruiting woes that Gus Malzahn had, not recruiting offensive tackles for 4 years for some reason. So that's a big jump there. And I think Ole Miss, that would be my other sleeper. Lane Kiffin and the boys down there were putting up some points. They were scoring 50 on everybody, including Alabama. So if Lane Kiffin could take that next step and get that defense playing at the SEC level, we could be looking at Ole Miss as someone who could be right there just under the top tier.
Yeah, and definitely one of the most eccentric personalities between him and Mike Leach is
that press conference. If we can get COVID handled and they had that one-on-one press conference, man, that is going to be a legendary press conference between Mike Leach and Lane Kiffin.
Absolutely. That's something to pay for. That's a
pay-per-view hit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Kyle Pitts leaving, man, is huge. Marco Wilson, that's debatable. He can go throw shoes somewhere else, I guess. That was a tough look. That could be the biggest, disappointment of the 2020 season for Florida is the guy Marco Wilson throwing the shoe to cost them a chance at the playoffs there. That's a tough look for him.
Yeah, big time. It definitely, yeah. So that puts a bow on our Power Five recap. I definitely appreciate Cursed Chargers for chiming in. Definitely appreciate the interaction. And yeah, so Zach, man, where can they find you on social media?
Yeah, you can find me at Zach McKinnell. You can find my co-host Brandon Williams. He works too much, so he couldn't make it. But it's at beat up from the hub. The Blue Bloods, man, at the __ Blue Bloods on Twitter, Instagram at the _ Blue Bloods. You can find us on YouTube, man, the Blue Bloods or the Blue Bloods CFB podcast. You can listen to the podcast really anywhere, guys. Just look up the Blue Bloods. We available on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you listen, man. So definitely appreciate you having me, man. I told you, anytime you call, I clear my schedule, and I'm always down to come on here.
Yeah, absolutely. And and we got some stuff cooking up in the month of February and March.
True.
So
That's true.
Zach definitely will not be a stranger to the Couch Coach Live experience here. We're gonna, and we'll probably announce a little bit more details during Super Bowl week. We'll see how everything goes with that, but we got some stuff in plans, and we'll definitely get that going. And yeah, man. And once again, thank you once again, Zach, for coming on and recapping the Power Five for us. And yeah, man, so definitely appreciate it, and definitely looking forward to the off season, the draft,
blast,
all this. Yep. So for Zach, this is Couch Coach, and this has been a special Couch Coach Live Power 5 recap, and we'll catch you next time.